Let's talk to Michael. Hey, Michael, you are live on the line with Promise and Forrest. What did you want to talk with us about tonight?
Hey guys. Yeah, so I've been working on framework, and it's with morality, and I kind of got to where I feel like I could, maybe prove God or some attributes through it.
Bro, okay.
Sure. Yeah, let's hear.
Yeah,
so which God do you?
Into it?
Well, I'll get you started. Which God do you believe in?
The Christian God.
Okay, cool. And so is this your argument for why you think that God exists? Because I think that's what we're going to be most interested in. And we can talk about morality surrounding it, but yeah, I guess I'd like if you can give us a general summary of your argument, kind of like 1 to 2 minutes.
All right, well,
sort of thing.
All right. Yeah, first it would be to establish that a God exists, and I would do the Christian God. But it's like, all right, so we have morality, and if I wanted to make a society, then if I have another person, you and I discuss morality with one another, and we would try to figure out what the ethics are going to be to how to run this society. So we would pick out morals that are greater than the morals that we have in ourselves, right? So, we would want it to be all loving, all caring, all knowing, all just, things that we aren't, because we're going to want to strive to be better than ourselves. And we want to make sure that what's best for everybody. So we're going to kind of make this perfect morality that we don't have, that's outside of us, that we're going to try to achieve. And we're going to, the attributes that are assigned to it are going to be, divine. It's going to be almost like a divine morality, something that we can never achieve.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Michael.
I have an issue with this already, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to get a little clarity, because are you basically calling God morality? Because I already not really sure that I understand exactly what your argument is, because currently I don't believe that a God exists, and I think morality is subjective. And to me, you're describing, like humans coming up with what we think morality is or should be, and like what our moral standards are, more so than even morality. You're not really describing morality, you're describing like how to find moral standards. So do you have an argument for the existence of a God, or are you just talking about if there was a God, what you think a God would want?
Well, yeah. So that's just, we'll get into it. What were the issues that you had? Sorry, I forgot your name, Forrest.
Well, mine was similar to what Promise just asked you. Is just like, if like it sounds like from what I'm hearing, I'm having a hard time pinning down what your actual argument here is, because you said I'm going to argue for the existence of a God, and it says here in the call screen you have a moral argument for God, and you started by saying we have morality, which morality doesn't point towards a God, and then you went on to say that if we were to try to have a society, we would come up with morality and try to get some better ourselves, which is mostly probably true.
Pretty much
morality,
what we've done.
yeah, morality evolves, both biologically speaking, we evolved with morality, and also culturally, morality improves and evolves over time as it is discussed, debated, reasoned, argued, and intelligently designed by human beings. So like that all stands to reason. That makes sense. None of this so far points to why we should believe in a God, certainly not the Christian God specifically.
Yeah, so morality is subjective, right?
Sure.
And then, but we also have an objective morality. And so I think the first beginning, the first beginning
is your more objective morality God?
Because you'd have to prove what's the objective source of this morality?
It would be in like the noumenal is where it would exist. Sort of like con.
So yeah, I think we're getting really off track. So let's rewind a
Yeah.
bit. Why do you
Okay.
believe that the Christian God exists?
It would be revelation and coming to have like a relationship. And this
So,
revelation, yeah,
that's the exact same reason that like lots of religious people and lots of conflicting religions believe. So that's not really going to work too much for us.
okay.
What about? Can I ask you like really quickly? Just like I'm trying to
Yeah.
like I also want to keep on track with why we believe in this God, but I really want to parse into like, do you think that the Bible is true?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that the character of God in the Bible, the God character, Yahweh, and all the like, do you think that the God as described in the Bible is an accurate depiction of who God really is and what God really wants?
At certain points, yes.
Okay,
How do you
so like
decide
some
which points?
that was
Yeah.
gonna be my next
Yeah.
question
So,
was to say like there's a
yeah.
lot of horrible shit that God does in the Bible. So how do you know?
Right. Yeah. All right. If when you look at the Bible, you read the stories, right? Um, I see that truth and the law and the morality that it's a story that unfolds, right? So the things that that are done in the Bible, they are done by humans that are imperfect. And because we can never, that's why I started out with
What
the morality part, because
I
this is
I
us
didn't ask about
unfolding through
excuse me,
history.
Michael, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah,
I didn't ask
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah.
humans. I asked about the character of God because the character
Oh, yeah, sorry.
God in the Bible
Yeah,
does horrible, hideous, indefensible, inexcusable, unjust, unmoral things. A lot.
okay.
And so like
Like
I'm
what?
curious to know like have you read your Bible?
I have.
Okay. So
So, like
then shouldn't be hard to
slavery is
come
an
up with
example.
so well, tell it,
Like,
yeah, him commanding slavery is a big one, but there's plenty more. The fact that he killed the firstborn children in Egypt and also plagued the people of Egypt with all sorts of plagues for decisions that their ruler made that they had no authority to change or choose or do anything with. He punished these innocent people for the Pharaoh's decisions. Also, speaking of the Pharaoh, he hardened the Pharaoh's heart and took away his free will so that he would continue to participate in slavery so that God could continue punishing the innocent people of Egypt that had no control over this. That's another one. Also, there was that time when he set two children on fire because they put the wrong incense in an incense burner. And then he threatened the children's parents that if they grieved the loss of their children, he would kill them and the rest of their community as well. There was the time when he made Saul the king and commanded Saul to commit genocide and wipe out the Amalekites, including every man, woman, child, infant, baby, including all of the donkeys and cattle and horses and all the things. And when Saul didn't kill enough people and tried to spare some of the people, God took him out of the position of power, made David the king, had David go commit genocide, and plagued Saul with demons and drove him insane for the rest of his life. We go on. There's the flood where he drowned every single thing that breathed air in the entire world because the humans that he made were behaving badly. And it specifically says that he regretted making them. There was the time when some children made fun of a man for being bald and he sent some bears to maul 40 children to death. We can go on and on and on, man. Like God does some pretty fucked up shit in the Bible, like throughout the whole thing. So that's what I was asking about. If you don't think that that's an accurate
right.
depiction of God, fine, we can talk about it. But if you think that the Bible is true, then we have an issue if you're going to say that this God has a moral high ground over us.
So I think that those things happened and that they're in the Bible. And here's something that, when I look at that stuff, I think to myself, why are these things in the Bible? Because if I'm going to make a holy book, right? Why would I put
But
all
Michael,
of
real
those
quick, I'm sorry.
obvious,
I want
terrible
to keep us
things?
on
Yeah,
track.
yeah.
So can you just
Mm-hmm.
answer Forrest's question and then you can get to that part?
Sorry, yeah, what was
Because
the
he had a very
question?
Yeah, he had a really specific question for you.
That if it, that yes, I believe those things are in the Bible. Yes.
That's
But
not
do
what I
you
asked you.
believe that?
I asked you,
Yeah.
yes, do you believe that that is an accurate depiction of the will and behavior of the God that you believe in? Do you think that the God of the Bible,
No.
as described in the Bible, is real?
Yes and no. And this is where the subjective part
Okay,
no,
comes
which,
in.
so then
Because
Michael,
we
which
get back.
one?
Right, then we get back to what Promise asked you earlier, which you also didn't answer, which
okay,
is how do you
right.
know when you read one verse where God says, like, we should love everybody, and if you grow a bunch of a field of crops, you should leave some unharvested so that homeless people can take free food, and that you should love your neighbor as yourself. And like, how do you know that part of the God is real? But the part where God gives specific instructions on how to keep slaves and how to beat your slaves and how to pass your slaves on to your children as property, that part isn't real. How do you know the difference?
And I agree with this. You don't.
But that was a question. How
But
do you
Okay, so
how
you don't,
why do
is
you
what he
pick
just said.
why Michael, why do you not own people as slaves? I'm gonna give you that assumption that you don't. And yet you also think it's
Fingers
good to
crossed.
like to be kind to your neighbor. Like why do you pick to follow that one and why do you not allow yourself the other, even though the Bible calls for both? How did you,
okay,
Michael,
so
decide which
there,
of those to go with and which one not to?
right, through my moralities of the way I process
And
information, the way
what is your morality based on?
reason and emotion from my experiences.
And
So subjective.
so it's
It
subjective.
is
Yeah.
subjective, correct? Yes,
Right.
right,
So
Right. So
so
right,
so
right,
where does a
then
God come into all of this? Why is a God included in
right.
your equation of anything in life?
Because what you see in the Bible is an evolution of the morality between us humans and the objective morality that we're trying to achieve. We see this as being played out through the Bible. See, we're always trying to get to God. We're trying to get to perfection.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm really
So
not trying to
why
cut you off so much, but like you keep saying things that don't make
No,
any
you're
sense to
good.
me.
No.
You said
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we earlier on, you said we have objective
Mhm.
morality. Now you're saying that you are basing everything in
Right.
subjective morality, but the story of the Bible is us trying to reach the objective morality that you believe exists. So whether or not
Right.
you are utilizing it at this moment, do you believe there is such thing as objective morality?
Yes.
Where does it come from?
It comes from like the noumenal. You know, like you have
What
the
is I don't know
phenomenal
what that
world,
is.
the world of phenomenon, and all right. So it's like cause and effect. You can
Michael,
never
let me
know
put
the
it this
true
way.
cause of anything.
Michael,
Yeah.
how
Mhm.
would we find out what objective morality is? Is it written down somewhere? Do you think God
We
put it
can't.
somewhere? Do you think
We can never know what that is. We can never know what
then
the
how do
objective
you know
Okay,
it
morality is.
so
exists? Then how do you know that objective morality exists?
The same way that I know morality exists, because, like I said, we can get together. And I'm sorry, I'm having this is like my first time trying to explain this, so like I'm
it's
having
it's
trouble.
okay.
Sorry.
It is a show, and we are interrupting you a lot because we're trying to keep you on like a specific
No,
train, because otherwise it would be all over the place. So I hope you understand. We're not trying to be rude to you here. It's just we have to keep focused, otherwise the show is not a show. But like the
no. I'm
problem here
glad
is
that
that
you
like
are. Thank you.
the problem here is that like I don't understand what Promise just asked you, like how do you know this thing exists in the first place, and also how does that then get you to a god, especially the Christian god, who is a monster? So how do we bridge this gap where you're like, I think there's something called objective morality, which I am able to achieve this understanding that this thing exists by totally subjective means, but I think it's there, and then something in the middle that I don't understand, and then we get to Yahweh, the God of the Bible, who is the most evil character in the Bible is actually a real dude who cares about whether or not I masturbate or have anal sex. Like what is the connection here?
The connection is first having a reason to believe that such a being would exist in the first place, which means
Okay,
that
great.
Yeah.
That's an awesome answer. You have to believe that thing exists in the first place. Why do you believe that thing exists in the first place?
And it would be based in morality, which would first set the tone for that there's something outside of ourselves that we are going to now set.
But you just said, I'm sorry, maybe I misunderstood you. Maybe I misunderstood you, but I'm pretty sure you just said that you root your faith in the existence of morality in the belief in a God, and you root your belief in a God in the necessity of your faith and morality. How am I missing something here?
Well, I think that that's why at the beginning I was like, well, I don't want to jump. First, the morality part is just to prove that we can use reason to show that there is a thing that's outside of ourselves to believe in, because that's the first sort of point of skepticism, is that nothing outside of ourselves that exists. Yeah, and I'm trying to draw that distinction first.
Because all we've gotten to is that with morality, the furthest we've gotten with this is basically you've admitted that your personal, and correct me if I'm wrong, your personal practice of morality is subjective, to the point that you are more moral than the God of the Bible because you're already doing better than what the God of the Bible would have allowed you to do. And your reason for that was saying that, if I'm understanding correctly, that God was like growing humanity up and like letting them take their time to become moral. But that doesn't make any sense, because even still, even if you're, it's going to take humanity thousands of years and somehow I didn't see this coming when I created them. Why wouldn't you go ahead and say in your book that you supposedly, that's your word for everybody, hey, it's not right to own people as slaves. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Why wouldn't you go ahead and lay that out? For example, when I worked with children for most of my professional career up until last year, and when you're teaching toddlers things, you don't say, because you're so young right now, it's okay to hit your peers because you're not going to figure it out. No, you go ahead and let them know, like, we don't hurt other people. Do you have patience with the fact that they're still learning that? Of course, and you handle it different ways. But the morality is the same. The ethics are the same. You don't like dial those back and then, okay, now you can't hit people. Now it's not okay. Okay, you guys can own slaves now, but it's going to not be okay in a couple thousand years. Do you see what I'm saying there?
I do, and I don't think that is exactly how I would frame. Like, I don't think there is one-to-one. What I would, I don't think it's one-to-one like that.
So let me ask you a different thing that's just like kind of similar, because let me see if I can actually find. I believe it's in chapter 30. So in Genesis chapter 38, verses 8 through 10 here, this dude has sex with his brother's wife, and he pulls out and sploots all over the ground, and God kills him for it. That's a thing that happens right at the beginning of the Bible. So chapter 38, Onan knew that his seed would not be his, and it came to pass when he went in unto his brother's wife that he spilled his seed on the ground, so as not to give seed to his brother, and the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him. So, like, God kills a dude for pulling out, and then you're telling me he can't manage to just say, don't own people as farming equipment. Don't. He didn't even have to kill anybody for owning slaves. Just be like, yo, y'all, hey, quit it. That he couldn't pull that off, but he can kill a guy for jorking it. He can kill a guy for collecting sticks. He can send bears to maul children for making fun of a bald person. He can, like, there's so many things that God deliberately goes out of his way to kill people over in this book that are the most mundane, ridiculous things in the world. When it comes to slavery, you think he just can't figure out how to like get it across to people, and he just kind of hopes we figure it out eventually in a couple thousand years? Like, what is that?
All right. So yeah, and no, these are good because these are exactly the questions that I want to answer. So the slavery or the Genesis 30. So the Genesis 30 happened after Abraham, and
The slavery thing happened after Abraham.
Right. Okay. Yep. Both of them
Can
did. Yes.
Here, real quick, I think we can shorten this. Can I just ask you this?
Yeah.
Do you think God
Yeah.
was ever okay? Do you think he ever thought it is moral to own people as slaves?
No.
Okay, so then why didn't he say that in the beginning?
Well, wasn't
Really
the
is
first
the long
commandment of slaves in Exodus? The first commandment was to not own slaves.
Nope.
That's not true.
That's not true.
No, actually, Exodus goes out of its way, and Exodus and Leviticus as well go out of their way to tell you where to buy slaves, how hard you can beat your slaves, like different rules for Hebrew versus non-Hebrew slaves. It says your slaves are your property to be passed down to your children. It tells you how, if you have a Hebrew slave who's supposed to be let go after 7 years, how you can give him a wife, and then the wife is your property forever, and their children are your property forever. But if he wants to stay with his wife and children, he also has to agree to be your property forever. So you have like this moral loophole that you can like trick him into being your slave forever, even though he's not supposed to be. Like, this is all, it's all pretty well laid out. And at no point is he like, stop owning slaves. Even like in the New Testament, they never say don't own slaves. They say treat your slaves okay. And they say slaves obey your masters. So it's never don't own slaves.
Right.
The best you get is be nice to your slaves. That's the best you ever get out of the Bible, is don't beat your slaves too badly.
Pretty badly, but not too bad.
Change.
Yes.
There's a change in the slavery. The I guess, is it called like the slavery we had with the
don't do
like
this.
chattel slavery.
Don't do this, Michael.
No, hold on. No, hold on. Let me hold on. Look, so then, but there's a change in it because it goes from you're not able to do this at all to you can do this to anybody, but you can't do it to the Israelites, right? You can't do it to Jews, but now you can own
Michael,
other nations.
why does
right?
But Michael, why does your objective moral source change?
Right.
Because that's the subjective man changing it. That's not God changing that. Okay,
these are
God
God's
said
commandments.
That it wasn't
my
actually
point
God.
that I'm making.
Those are God's
Correct.
commandments in the Bible. Also, Michael, I just want to be clear. Like, can we agree for a second? There is no such thing as good slavery, right?
Prisons today, it is a form of slavery. Like if a person commits a crime,
yes,
if a person commits a crime,
and it's wrong. Michael, that's not what I asked you. You're correct. Modern day slavery is prisons. Yes, we have a special concession in our in the, I believe it's the 13th Amendment that says that slavery is not allowed except for as punishment for a crime. And yes, we do use prison labor as slave labor. Yes, nobody's arguing that that's not the case. We also think that's evil. The question that I asked you, Michael, is slavery ever okay? Is there any kind of slavery that is morally acceptable?
If the type of slavery you're talking about is where somebody commits a crime, then yes.
So you think that it is okay if someone commits a crime that they should lose their humanity and be forced to work as slaves?
I think that a society can justify that to be able to handle how crimes are committed and how to handle social problems. You know, if somebody goes and robs somebody else and they can't pay that person back, I think that there's.
So right now, Michael, I have credit card debt. Should a credit card company be able to come pick me up and take me to some factory to work until I pay that bill off? And not let me do anything, and I'm not in control of myself at all?
Like, I wouldn't want that to happen to me, no.
The answer is no, Michael. That's wrong,
Right.
and you know
The
that,
answer
and I
just
feel like you're dancing around this stuff because you're trying to make allowances, but to get us back on track, you're
Right.
still all we've done is that you've claimed morality proves God, God proves morality, so we've got this, argument that's not making any sense, and the morality isn't even consistent. But you just said something that I want to go back to. You said something about how it
Yeah.
wasn't God that said that about, because I asked you, why are these things changing in the Bible? Why does God change
Right.
what he said about slavery? And you said you don't think that was God. How do you determine what God said and what God didn't say?
So when it comes to the Bible, or me personally, or in the Bible, how would I determine it?
You
you
personally,
personally.
how do you find out? Like, how do you know God said one thing and how do you know he didn't say another thing?
I don't think that I can,
But you just
because
told
I,
me that
I
you
every
didn't think you just told me that you didn't think you said God didn't say that. So how did you
right,
determine
because
that?
I would
How
have
did
to
you
say,
determine?
I would have to determine. Yeah. So I would
It's
determine it by rating it against what I would say is the highest morality. Right.
and
So
there it
God told me
is.
to do something was
There we
wrong.
go.
I
And
would
so
then
you're more
say,
Yeah.
moral than this God that we still don't have any evidence of whatsoever. So why do you need a God? Your morality is better than the Bible's, which is why you have to
because I
cherry pick
can
from
never
the
achieve
Bible to
that.
make it
I can
work.
Barely.
never, I can never,
Barely,
Yeah,
because
I
you're
can
apparently
still
never.
barely.
advocating for slavery. Yeah, no, this is the thing, man. That was a very honest answer, and I'm delighted that you gave it to us. Is that you don't know what God is or isn't. You don't know what morality is or isn't. You don't know any of these things. You just know what you prefer. You have your preferences based on your cultural heuristics and your personal ideas, and you judge the Bible and the God that was in the Bible based on your preferences and your ideas of your morality, which is why you're able to simultaneously be a functioning human being and not follow the laws of the Bible, which would quickly get you thrown into prison, and also justify horrific shit like slavery as a form of punishment. What the fuck was that, Michael? You're twisting yourself into these moral pretzels in order to justify the monster that you want to believe in, while also justifying the monster itself by saying that it isn't as evil as we think because it's actually what you think. It's just lazy thinking, man. And it sucks that you're just doing this instead of actually criticizing the God that you claim to believe in, whose sins far outweigh your own.
Yeah, because there's a distinction between, and I'm not doing a good job in making this distinction between how, we receive morality. No matter if we did get morality straight from God, straight from the source of God, right? It would still have to filter through our reason. It would have to filter through our emotions, right? It would become objective, no matter how, no, we can get it straight from the source, right? And it's going to become subjective, no matter
But
what.
Michael, how would we determine if there is a source?
Right. So we get together, you and I, right? We're going to make a society, and we say to ourselves, what do we want the society to be? And
Michael,
we
that's what
want it to
we've
be
done. I'm asking.
perfect,
I don't know. I don't
right?
think you're understanding me.
So that's
How would I determine
okay.
if there's a God or not?
Well, this is one way. You would start to look at the attributes of that God would have. One of the attributes was that
How do you
God
know
would
what
have a
attribute
perfect
God would
divine
have?
morality,
How do you know what attributes a God would have?
because they would have the attributes that
How
would
do
be
you know
perfect.
that? How do you know that? And how do you know
Because
what perfect is? How do you know what perfect
I
is?
I don't I don't. It exists
Because
beyond my right. I don't know
So
what
it just
perfect is. I only
I'm going
have
to
a
be honest.
conception of what perfect is.
Unless Forrest thinks we should keep going, I think we're just getting back to
yeah,
the exact
we're
same point in this call, and we have other theists on the line to where when
Okay.
I finally get you to answer something, then it's like, well, we don't know. And so ultimately, everything I'm hearing, which I think is a good place for you to start from, is, well, we can't know. And therefore,
right.
why should I believe anything you're saying? That's what this all keeps coming down to is, well, we don't know. I couldn't know. I have no idea. How would I know? Great, I agree. Therefore, why are we saying that there's objective morality? Why are we saying there's a God? Why are we saying any of this stuff when you can't possibly know? You don't know, like, what would perfect be? There's no standard for that. We don't know that a perfect is a thing. It's just your subjective idea of perfection.
Well, you and I, I mean, you know, and I was saying you have to go that, you know, and that's fine. I've taken up a lot of time, but you and I can have a discussion right now. What do you think perfect is? Like, let's figure this out.
I don't,
you know,
I don't
like, that's how the conversation would go.
I don't think that exists.
I don't think that's a concept
I don't
that makes
think
any
it
sense.
exists either.
But you do, because you think there's a guy who embodies perfection, which you don't think is real, but you do think the guy is real, even though you can't define the guy or tell me what the guy could possibly be like, or why the guy is perfect necessarily. Maybe God does exist, but is imperfect and just as fallible and you know, whatever as everybody else. Maybe God is just as capricious and mortal in his appetites as you and I are, just like, you know, the Romans or the Greeks or the Egyptians or the Norse gods. But you don't believe in them because you just don't want to, because you have no reason to believe anything that you're saying. You just do because you do because you do. And you keep coming back to this thing. Well, God has to exist because this thing has to exist. How do you know that has to exist? I don't know. But I do know that if God is real, it's this way. How do you know that? I don't know. Well, what does that even look like? I don't know. But that's what God is. And it's just, you're not getting anywhere. You're just telling us what you want to exist without any actual reason to believe it. I have one more question for you, Michael, and then I'm out and done. If you were starving and you and your family and everybody starving to death, would you steal food to survive?
Well, yeah, and I would kill that guy's brother for banging my wife and nutting on the ground also.
Sure, yeah. My question is, would you steal food to feed yourself and your family?
Yes.
You would. Yeah. Cool. Should you be enslaved for it? No, but can I see
so you do understand that would do that and would be justified?
So you do understand compassion when it applies to you, but when it applies to other people, they're criminals, they should be slaves. Yeah, think about that for a while, Michael, and when you're as disgusted as I am, maybe you will grow out of this belief. Promise I'm done. Are
Michael,
you done?
Yeah, I'll just say this, Michael. I do appreciate that. I feel you've tried to answer our questions, and I appreciate you being cool during the conversation. I just think you said that was your first time calling, so I appreciate you calling in. Go back and listen to this. And if you want to call, I would be interested anyways in taking your call sometime. If you want to call back and really offer a concrete, reason for why you believe a God exists, because I don't think we really got to that. So go back, listen to this, maybe refine your argument a bit, or come up, I couldn't tell you if you asked me what was Michael's reason for believing in a God. I couldn't really tell you. So come up with that. I think that's a good idea just for your own sake. And then if you want, call back. I'd be happy to take the call. I appreciate you engaging with us and in the way that you did.
Yep. Take care.
Yeah, thanks for taking the call and giving me the chance. Yep. Bye.
Of course. Thanks, Michael. Have a good night. The
what
old
a ride.
Plug into itself, to power it up argument.
Hey there, Eric. Noting that anyone watching that clip makes atrociously poor life decisions, where should they send their protection money to prevent further damage?
All protection money should be sent to patreon.com/calltheline, or else we will break your kneecaps.
Okay, we can't say that. I think we can't say that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hit like and subscribe.